Go now? All right. Okay. Hi, guys. You're here again, Cindy Oser with Hobby Memorial Library, and we have very special guests today. We have some representatives from Fort Hood from the Directorate of Public Works Environment Division, Miss Jackelyn Ferrar from the Sustainability Program Manager, and Jesse Yarbrough, the Corporate Operations Compost Operations Manager, and AKA King of Compost and Master of Compost. And they're going to be talking to us today about composting. So I'm going to go ahead and let them take it away. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Cynthia. So as she said, my name is Jackelyn Ferrar, and I am the Sustainability Program Manager for U.S. Army Garrison Fort Hood. In my current role, I oversee a variety of things, but primarily waste minimization and source reduction, reducing your waste at the source. And I also oversee the Fort Hood Compost Facility operations. In my previous role, I worked for Natural Resources on Fort Hood for about more than 10 years, and I managed a program for at-risk species where we studied monarch butterflies and pollinators and avian grassland species. And so all these things are really connected to sustainability and making sure that our resources are available well into the future. So with that, I'll send it over to Jesse.
My name is Jesse Yarbrough. I am the Certified Compost Operations Manager down at the Fort Hood Compost Facility. I've been on Fort Hood for about 40 years now. I am actually a contractor. I work for a company called Whitetail Environmental under DPW Environmental.
All right, well, I'll share the PowerPoint now. All right. So today we're going to discuss a variety of topics surrounding compost. So everything from our current program at Fort Hood, the Fort Hood Compost Facility, composting, different ways to do it at home, and some participation opportunities if y'all are interested. So just to provide you with a little bit of background, we're going to talk about, we're going to spend some time talking about the Fort Hood program and why it's in place, and then we're going to go into some things that you can do at home. So the way everything started was with the Net Zero initiative that was brought about through DOD, the Department of Defense, about maybe 2010. In 2011, we became a pilot installation for net zero waste specifically. The Net Zero program focuses on green energy technology, water conservation, and also waste minimization. So it's all about sustainability, and for Fort Hood, we take it to another level because we're also trying to sustain the mission. So maintaining mission readiness that's where all of our efforts are firmly grounded. And what that means is we try to maintain the resources for our soldiers to be able to train well into the future. So I guess you could ask yourself, one would ask yourself, well, how do I even begin to know what I need to focus on as far as net zero waste, right? So we did a variety of studies to kind of show us where we needed to focus on. And one thing that I really would like to touch on is that there's a little bit of a stigma attached to the net zero waste moniker. And it doesn't mean gross waste. It doesn't mean that you have to completely bring everything down to zero. If you can, fantastic. And I know that in your home, it's something that's a little more feasible. But when you're talking about a military installation, for us, net zero waste is more about maintaining the balance of what's generated at the source and what we can divert from the landfill. So waste diversion is a big thing that I oversee, and we're always trying to maximize opportunities for that through our recycling program and through our composting program and source minimization. And so there on the side there, you can see kind of where we were and where we're going. So that was our Net Zero Waste 2020 Fort Hood. That was our graphic years ago, and now we're trying to move in a direction where it's more all-encompassing with energy and water and waste minimization and source reduction and resource resilience. So as I mentioned previously with the waste characterization, we had a team of scientists come down and they literally did some serious dumpster diving, and they went back to a field lab and separated everything out by different waste stream types. So there you can see a list of all the different things that they sorted out, from food, cardboard, recyclables, styrofoam, and of course, food. So there you can see that in the light blue, that was a percentage of how much food waste was going into our landfill. And so that right there was a huge indicator of one thing that we could really focus on, which brought about having a compost facility. So presently with the food waste composting, we pick up from child development centers at different facilities, Fort Hood, food courts, and the commissary. We process about 600 tons of food waste annually. And we recently started taking on all of the wood waste management as well. And so what that means is all of the vegetation management projects that occur across Fort Hood, we accept some of that wood debris, and we process about 1,500 tons annually. So it's quite a monumental task. There on the bottom, you'll see the food waste composting graphic that we share with our community. Just bringing about awareness. About 40% of the materials that enter Fort Hood are organic and compostable. So that gives us a great opportunity to reduce the amount of waste that goes into the landfill so that we could extend the lifespan of our landfill. With the wood waste management, it's quite challenging at times since we've been doing it for about a year now, but we have looking into new technologies so that we could manage the wood waste more efficiently and safely. So into the future, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're currently trying to do and what the dream scenario would be. So we're looking into this not new technology. It's been around for a little bit, but it's more it's evolved. And so this is an air curtain or an air burner firebox. And so right now, one of the challenges that we're really facing is just the monumental amount of wood waste that we get daily. And so we have a huge brush pile that kind of accumulates all year. And so recently we were able to leverage support from natural resources to burn it down, but we have to come up with our own solution that we can control ourselves, rather than relying on other sources to manage this challenge for us. And so the best feasible option right now is through the air curtain, the air burner firebox. And this firebox can burn and reduce the volume of the wood waste down by 90%. By several tons an hour. So something that we would take weeks or months to manage, we could do within a few days. And so the great thing about this is that we can turn around and use the biochar and re-implement it into the composting process. So it's a full circle of sustainable management of waste. So this is the dream scenario that I talked about. The one opportunity with the firebox is to be able to turn it to a waste to energy component. And so what you're seeing here is a graphic of what the possibilities are if you have that in place. So we have a firebox that's continually being fed wood waste, and that wood waste is burned and that energy is harvested, and it can be sent out to a variety of things. And so right now our yard is basically an area that creates compost and also manages the wood waste, but we would like to turn that into more of a materials yard where we can maybe sell the product like wood mulch and compost, and then we can put that back into our qualified recycle program funds so that we can continue to support pollution prevention efforts and community activities. And so with that, I'll let you guys watch a really quick video on how this operation works.
Protecting the environment, lowest cost system, whole log processing, portability. This is the Air Burners PG Firebox, an innovative product used where the primary objective is to reduce massive amounts of wood waste in a cost-efficient and environmentally friendly manner. And in addition, where the heat energy produced by the waste combustion is converted to electricity, which can then be utilized locally or sold to the power company. The PG Firebox marries an air burner's air curtain firebox to an electrical generation power plant. The energy produced by the burning of wood waste inside the firebox is captured and utilized to operate the power plant. This power-producing process can continue as long as the firebox is fed a steady diet of wood waste.
The process starts with the fan we have drawing the hot air off of the firebox, and it regulates the amount of hot air that it draws into the system based on the temperature of the water being input to the generating unit.
The PG Firebox has been turning heads in the industry.
This represents a reasonable alternative to get rid of the biomass without contributing a great deal of particulates to the air basin. You can throw whole logs into these things without any preparation. Many types of management of biomass, you have to prep them, like chip them. It's expensive, and it uses a lot of energy to do that.
Today, thanks to cheap oil and gas prices, we no longer have an energy problem, but we still have a wood waste problem. And eliminating that problem is our top priority. Waste to energy conversion simplified. Portable, affordable, economical, simple to operate, and environmentally friendly. Visit our website at airburners.com or give us a call at 772-220-7303.
Okay, you're back.
So as Jackelyn mentioned, we collect from a variety of places. Well, first, let me say that we're going to talk about how we compost at our yard currently, and then later in the presentation, we'll cover how you can compost at home. So again, we collect from child development centers, dining facilities around the installation, food courts, the commissary. One of the biggest challenges we have is with training. Everything we collect is pre-consumer. So everything that's produced out of the kitchen, like if they put food on the line and don't use all that food that day, then that goes into our compost bins and we collect that. We collect food waste about 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the temperature outside. We collect manure from the first calf horse stables 2 to 3 times a week. And then we also collect, we receive a lot of wood waste from the installation that's from arborists that trim trees, landscapers, and things like that. The type of composting that we utilize is called an aerated static pile. And all that means is traditionally you have a pile that you'll have to turn to reintroduce air into it. Well, with our setup, we have pipes that run underneath our piles, and we pump air through those pipes that go from the bottom through the top. And so we don't have to handle the material as much. We can go to the next. So that's you. All right.
All right, sorry about that. I had to unmute. I couldn't find the button. So this is how we currently utilize the compost on the installation. And so there you'll see at the very top picture, we use it to revitalize training lands. And so as you would imagine, the heavy maneuver training with tanks really rips up the soil. And so in order to maintain the natural resources so that, again, our soldiers can train well into the future, we have to go back and restore that soil. And so one way that we've currently started, an initiative that we just started recently, was to treat those areas with the compost and then reseed it with a native seed mix in order to create root stability again, and they can start training on it. So that's one way. The next way is adaptive and integrative management. So this is an awesome program. It's a program that I managed previously. We do a lot of work with gardens and community activities. There you'll see the second photo. That's a picture from the AIM garden. And so we contribute compost and mulch to their initiatives. We also have worked with Fort Hood Family Housing, and we have several different community gardens in each of the different villages in Fort Hood. So if you're not familiar with the Fort Hood villages, there's different sections on the installation with different villages, and some of them have community gardens. And so they're really difficult to maintain because, as you know, people are constantly coming and going. So one initiative that we started is kind of revisiting those community gardens and finding a way to maintain them more long-term and consistently. So we've kind of adopted that. We contribute compost, mulch, and we also contribute our heartfelt hands. So we go out there, we are on the ground and working with the community so that we can revitalize those gardens. And we also get a lot of help from the Girl Scouts too. So that's how we're currently using things. Let's see. I'm trying to go to the next slide. 1 second. Okay.
So the vermicomposting has been somewhat of a pet project for me. That's not something that's really covered in our scope, but I thought it was so interesting that I wanted to get into it a little bit. Currently with the compost we produce with mixing the food waste with the wood chips and the manure, we have to send it off and get sampling done and have it tested. And it's fantastic for growing in all types of soil, but especially what we have here with a lot of clay and caliche. But with the vermicomposting, it's 7 to 10 times more effective than just regular food waste composting. With the vermicomposting, there's a particular type of worms that are nicknamed composting worms, and that's the red wigglers. And it really doesn't take much to get this started. All you need is some soil, some food scraps, or some leaves, grass clippings, things like that, and a handful of worms. You can order them online if you just Google red wigglers. The most important thing is keeping up with the moisture and making sure they have enough feedstock, which is going to be mainly food scraps. The red wigglers produce once you start vermicomposting, you'll produce 3 kinds of products. So you'll end up with the worms because they'll multiply. It takes about 3 months for that to start happening. So you'll end up with more worms to manage. You'll also end up with the actual worm castings, which that's what you're trying to harvest. That's what's extremely beneficial when you're trying to grow things. And then you'll also end up with any liquid that leaches through that. It's called, they call it compost tea or worm tea. So you've got the worms, the worm castings, and then the compost tea or the worm tea that you can use. You can water plants with it. Anything you're trying to grow, you can water with it, and it's extremely effective.
And now we have a video to share. Oh, she can't hear me.
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you. I'm getting there.
back on me?
Okay, you're back.
Okay. So now we're going to cover some ways that you can compost at home. On this slide, there's a link to Cornell University. They've got a lot of good resources to help you get started because there is a lot of science behind how the composting process takes place. But the best advice I can give anyone who wants to start is, I mean, you can do all the research you want to, but the most important thing is just starting. And then you can figure out what works well for you and what doesn't. There's a carbon nitrogen ratio that you're trying to maintain. And again, the Cornell University stuff will outline what materials have what amount of carbon, so you can try to get that ratio dialed in a little bit. But the important thing to remember is you want greens and browns, pretty much an equal amount of both, which the browns are going to be things like dead leaves or woody materials and things like that. The greens are going to be things like grass clippings, and then you can incorporate food scraps into that as well. There's also a list of things that you want to compost and things that you want to try to stay away from, like meat and dairy. Those are a little more advanced if you're going to get into composting. The moisture is a big thing. And a lot of people don't understand. They'll just have a pile in their backyard of all these things, and they just put it in a pile and walk away from it. But you actually do have to work with the material a little bit. So you want to make sure it's damp enough to where you squeeze it. If you grab a handful and squeeze it, a little bit of moisture will drip out. But if it's too moist, that's going to create a little bit of a problem. That's when you start getting odors and things like that. And then the other thing to remember that's important is airflow. So even if you have a little compost bin, you have to aerate it every couple of days. So if it's a pile in the back, you want to get in with a shovel and just turn the material. The microbes that you want, they actually live on a thin film of moisture that is on the outside of the material, like on the outside of the dirt particles or on the wood chips. And so that's the thing that you're trying to maintain. So as long as you have a decent moisture level and you have good airflow, that pile is going to start to heat up and those materials are going to break down a lot faster. Again, just getting out and trying it is the biggest thing. Once you start it, you can always dial in those little things later. Like if it's too dry, you'll know the temperature will drop. If it's too moist, again, you'll start getting odors and whatnot. So getting those ratios is important, but it's not the most important thing. And again, you can always dial those in at a later time.
Okay, so with the final slide, I just want to encourage the community to participate. And so here are a variety of opportunities. So you can bring us your compost. We typically only have ID card holders or people that are affiliated with Fort Hood. Bring us your compost. And on the side there, you can see what we would love to have. Now, I know that Jesse mentioned no meat products and things like that. And that's more for your at-home setup, but we're able to take a variety of things that are listed here. And then we also have the items that we would prefer not to have. A lot of the times we get food waste that's still in packaging. And so that's a major challenge, but we don't foresee that happening with our community. But we always like to share the information because, just so that you know and you have awareness. And there's a phone number there that you can call, and that's my work number if you're interested in participating and bringing us your compost on Fort Hood. We also do Christmas tree recycling the first couple of weeks in January. And so that's a tentative date, but we'll share that on the Fort Hood DPW and Fort Hood Recycle pages so that our community can know when to come and drop off their Christmas trees. And we also have a graphic for that for do's and don'ts as well. Of course, we don't want Christmas trees that we can still light up. So we don't want any lights or decorations. We just want your tree. Another great way to kind of stay aware of all of the community outreach opportunities and events that we have, following the Fort Hood DPW and Fort Hood Recycle pages. Again, the links are in the chat. So be sure to like and follow those pages so that you can stay well aware of everything that we're doing on Fort Hood, not just with composting, but all of our other sustainability initiatives. And with that, if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to take them.
Did you want to show that other website? The third website.
I can't hear.
Say that one more time, Cindy.
Did you want us to show the third website?
Well, that's just the link for resources.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So do I
Alyssa,
need to put the
you
link for resources for the Cornell in the chat?
yes, yes.
Okay.
And there was no questions at the time. All right, I have a couple of questions. So are you so you have to be able to get on base, correct? Is that, do you have to, like, if you know someone that's on base, can they bring
I can't
the
hear anything.
items for the composting?
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I can field that question. Yeah, if you have access or if you know someone that has access to Fort Hood, then you can bring things to our facility. It's right on the corner of Clark and Turkey Run. So it's located out by the landfill on Clark Road. But that would be, we're not set up to where we can collect from the community outside of Fort Hood right now.
Okay.
I'm
All
trying to
right.
stop
And-
sharing.
yeah, if you stop sharing, we should be able to. He's
Help.
coming to rescue you.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
There we go. So, y'all are just in the process of, you said that y'all just started a lot of composting now. Where is it, just gardens y'all put it in, and just like the big trenches from the tanks? Do y'all do anything else with what you compost?
So the end goal was to be able to sell any products that we create at the compost facility. And we were going to do it through our qualified recycle program. So that's something that we're still exploring. That would be the most ideal situation because we want to provide more funding for our qualified recycle program so that they can continue to support various initiatives. And they also help pay for the fireworks at Fort Hood and a lot of other things. And so we want to keep that going. But right now, the primary use is community gardens. We also have a spring and fall cleanup that the entire installation participates with. And so we're trying to get the message out that people are more than welcome to come and use our resources for their spring and fall cleanup initiatives. And of course, the training land restoration is a really big piece because we're doing hundreds of acres at a time. So that does take a lot of our product. So we're also in the process of trying to, again, efficiently manage the wood waste so that we can create a larger volume of compost so that we can support everything that we do on Fort Hood.
Well, Jesse, you had mentioned these wigglers. If you don't purchase these these worms, can you still do composting?
So you can compost without the red wigglers. It's just a different type of composting. There are other worms that will break down, food scraps, grass clippings, wood waste, and things like that. A lot of times you'll see a mix of like red wigglers, night crawlers, and there's a few others that are their primary function. Like I said, they're known for being able to compost quickly and efficiently. But even without the worms, like I said, the composting is not, again, there is some science to it and some science behind it, which is that link for Cornell University is excellent because they've really got everything dialed in. Their program is massive and they've really taken all the guesswork out of it. But composting at home is pretty simple. Like I said, the only thing that I see a lot of people do, and even when I was growing up, I mean, as a kid, my parents had a compost pile, but it was more of you would take the food waste, the food scraps and grass clippings, and you would just put them in this pile and just let it sit. And it will break down like that. But ideally, you're going to have to add moisture and you're going to have to turn it to get airflow into it. And of course, when you turn it, it's going to dry out a little bit. So you just have to keep up with the moisture and you got to keep up with the airflow. And that's why I was saying there's expensive tools and meters to let you know how much moisture content is in it. But if you just pick it up and squeeze it, if it clumps together when you open your fist, that's a good amount of moisture, even if nothing drips out. But if you squeeze it together and when you open your fist, it just crumbles back into your hand, you want to add a little more moisture to it. But the goal is, if your moisture is right and your airflow is right, no matter what the ambient temperature is outside, that compost pile is going to heat up and that's going to do two things. For one, those microbes have a certain range of temperature that they like to operate in. So that's going to be anywhere from 120 probably to about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. So if as long as they're within that range, they're happy. And then also as long as it's above 130 for 3 consecutive days, then that's going to kill off all the bad microbes that you don't want. It's going to kill off all the weed seed. And so you're just left with a real clean, good product to use.
So composting boxes, they're heated as opposed, I always thought you just threw it in a pile in your backyard and we're done with it. No?
No, not quite. Any kind of compost bin that you buy, it's not going to come heated. So the heat is generated from the microbes and from the organisms. When they're happy and they're eating the food scraps and eating the twigs and the grass clippings, they're going to generate heat, and that heat is a good thing. Like I said, they have a range that they like to operate in, and so if you can. Even if you don't have a thermometer, if you open up the pile, like that pile on most days, most mornings, when it's kind of cool outside, like around 65, 70 degrees, you'll see a little steam coming off that pile. That's what you want. Like, that's a good thing. That's not a problem. You don't have to, with the small piles that people are going to have at home, you're not running a fire risk or anything like that. But you definitely want it to heat up. So if it's not heating up, again, those things are still going to break down. It's just going to take a lot longer, and the process isn't as efficient as it could be.
Well, I noticed that you guys said that for your uses, you use food waste as opposed to food scraps, like to not share everybody's germs, but we can do scraps, right?
Yeah, when I say food waste, I'm referring to food scraps. I mean, any unused food pretty much is going to be okay for the process. Now, there are a couple things that, like for instance, if you're doing the vermicomposting with the worms, you want to stay away from citrus, you want to stay away from onions, but there's a lot of things, mainly with the food scraps, even with whether you're doing the vermicomposting or you're just doing the traditional composting, fruits and vegetables are the best thing you can do. Those will break down the best. Those are going to keep everything pretty balanced. Now, that's why when you start adding like meats and dairy, it's a lot more difficult to maintain. That's when you have to get that temperature up, because if you don't, you're going to end up with pathogens and things like that you don't want.
And flies, do you have problems with flies?
Depending on the time of year, we can have problems with flies, but that's mainly because of our feedstock piles. Because we receive so much material, like with the manure, we have massive piles of manure. We have massive piles. After we do our collection, we come and dump that material on a pad of wood chips, and then we cover it up with a mix of wood chips and manure. And so while that food's breaking down, we will end up with some flies, but at home, that's not really an issue.
You've not seen my backyard. Flies are crazy right now. So, well, that is awesome. Let's see. Are there any other questions, Alyssa? She'll let us know. No questions now. So, okay. All right. Well, you guys have given us some great information. We had an earlier virtual event where the environmental science professor here talked about composting, and it is definitely, would you guys say that this is something that's going to help our environment in the long run?
I'm going to say absolutely. And that's the greatest thing about it is you're taking a product, you're taking things that normally you would just throw away and they would end up in the landfill. And of course, everything that goes to the landfill, a landfill has a lifespan. And so the less you can put into that landfill, the better. And so you're taking these things that are normally a waste item and you're turning them into a product that you can use around your house. I mean, compost is great for everything, whether you're trying to grow grass, whether you have a garden, like a flower garden, or you have a vegetable garden, it's going to be beneficial no matter what.
Well, and we have a question in the chat.
Oh, we
How should
do.
I start my compost program at home?
Okay, go for it.
All right. So normally is what people are going to have at home is going to be things like leaves, grass clippings, and then the food scraps. You want to find it doesn't matter whether it's in the shade or in the sun. It really, like I said, that ambient temperature doesn't affect the temperature of the compost much, but you just want to get them into a pile. And once they're in that pile, let them sit for maybe 2 or 3 days. Um, Add a little moisture to it. Again, not to where it's sopping wet, but just to where you can squeeze it. And when you open your fist, it'll stay together in a clump. Once you've got the moisture right, which that's going to be around 50% moisture, every couple days, just turn the pile, or maybe once a week, just uh, agitate it, turn it so that you can get air into it, and it'll take off from there. Once it gets started, it really doesn't require a lot of care, and then you can just add more things to it as you get them.
Yeah, and of course at Lowe's you can buy a variety of things to help you along with your composting at home adventure. You've seen the rolling bins that you can buy from Lowe's. You can put food waste into that, and it just provides you with an easier ability to turn it rather than going out and doing it manually. But both options work well.
Okay, and we have another question in our chat.
Should I add the compost straight to my garden or mix it?
Ideally, you would want to mix the compost like a 50-50 compost soil mix, but depending on how much compost you have, once once all the food and the leaves and the branches are broken down, you and you can visually see that you don't have chunks of food, you don't have big chunks of leaves, it'll look just like dirt. So you can apply that just topically over a garden or over grass. But ideally, if you're going to plant things, you want to mix that first. But if you're just trying to, like if you've got a dead spot in your lawn, you can just add it straight to that spot, maybe with a little bit of seed mixed in. But even if you just add it to those bare spots, the rest of the grass will take in and it'll do what it's supposed to do.
I have a question. I live in Killeen, and our community, a lot of communities are watching now. Would this be something that a city would benefit from, was to have like a one central composting area that people can bring their stuff to?
Yes. So I also sit on the Regional Solid Waste Council for neighboring cities. And that is one thing that has been brought up in discussion with the new plan that's been put in place. And so we've been talking a lot about having a centralized location for all the communities to come and bring their compost. And so I think that's something that's going to be heavily looked at in the future so that it can be established, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity to provide resources and support, because we already have a well-established composting program on Fort Hood. So I would stay tuned for that, and any developing compost initiatives in the area we can share online.
And I just wanted to add, I know City of Killeen, City of Copper's Cove, they've got facilities where they're already composting as a community. And so you can go, I can't remember exactly what the charge is, but it's real minimal. You can go get if you want to go pick up compost from them, like finished mature compost, they allow you to come pick it up. Sometimes you can get it by the bucket load. I'm not exactly sure how they divvy it out or what the price is, but again, I would do that before I went to like Lowe's or Home Depot and bought a prepackaged item.
Yes, I know Copper's Cove, the last time we went, I think they were doing $6 a yard, which is really, really reasonably priced. And you can call ahead and schedule an appointment for pickup, and they'll fill up your truck bed. So that's a really good resource.
Awesome. Awesome. All good resources here. So guys, go ahead and start, your composting. And I noticed that it didn't take very long for that pumpkin in your video to disintegrate. So we're talking what? In a month you could have an amazing pile of compost, or less?
4 to 6 weeks is probably a pretty good average. Now, it's going to vary. Again, if your moisture is not, if you have too much moisture, too little moisture, if it gets too dry, that's going to affect the time a little bit. Again, it'll still break down. It'll just take a little longer. So 4 to 6 weeks is a pretty good amount of time where you end up with a product. And then once it's composted, once the grass clippings or whatever you're putting in that compost pile is broken down, you want to let that sit probably for a couple weeks to mature. It'll burn off some ammonium and things like that. So that's what we call mature compost. The more mature it is, or the longer it sits after it's been processed, the better it is.
And one more question. Do you have a way of, like, say for instance, you may have gotten the wrong material mixed in with your stuff. Is there a way to kind of like make sure you didn't put any pathogens in it or anything like that? Or is it just not all that important if you got a little bit of something else from your plate in there?
Yeah, it's not going to matter too much. Once it gets up to temp, there's very few things that, even if you have newspaper, paper plates, cardboard and things like that, those can go in there. Those will break down. Things like that take a little bit longer because they're not organic, but they'll still break down. So the main thing that you want to try to do is just keep things out like plastics, because obviously that's not going to break down. That, again, you're still going to end up with compost. You're still going to end up with a good product. But you'll have to, at some point in the process, you're going to have to get that material out.
So for folks at home, it's a little different because you have complete control over what's going into that compost pile, right? But for us, we are receiving it, we're collecting it from different entities, we're receiving it from different places. And so it is a little harder for us to control, obviously, what's going in there. And so we give very, very good instructions on what to bring and what not to bring. But of course, things always kind of get in there. So one way that we ensure that our compost product is safe, we do laboratory testing periodically. And so I'll let Jesse go into the testing aspect of it a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, with the testing, we'll take a composite sample of the compost. And with our process, because of the equipment that we have access to, we're going to have things that people at home aren't going to have. We have what's called a trommel screen, where once we've mixed the food scraps and the wood chips and the manure together, and once it's been put on the line and it cooks down, we put it through basically not a filter, but we sift out the fines, and that's what we consider finished compost. And so the larger chunks of wood debris, a lot of trash, if there's like plastic bags and things like that, because we get a lot of that, those things are filtered out, are screened out, and we can deal with it that way. But at home, like I said, you're not going to really run into that issue. There's a lot of different ways to compost. Some people at home might be able to rig up a rudimentary system where you can blow air. And I'm going to be honest, our setup is, when we first opened, we had a company give us a quote on what it would take to set us up with their blower system that was fully automated. It had temperature probes that you would place in the piles, and it pretty much would take care of itself. That was probably about $25,000. So after talking to some other places that were already composting and seeing the setups that they had, we use literally bounce house blowers that are housed in dog houses. And there's a corrugated pipe that goes from that blower to a plastic pipe that runs underneath our piles. And that's what pumps air. So it's not, the only difference is we have to manually check our temperatures. We have a 4-foot probe that will stick in different spots to know what the pile's doing. But it doesn't take much, again, to get a lot of this started. So if you can turn it manually, that's a great thing. But once it takes off, pretty much it almost will take care of itself.
Say for instance, I wanted to do one at home, and I've been watching what I put in there. am I able to use this compost to like grow vegetables? Because I'm eating out of this stuff again.
Absolutely. And it's amazing. When I first started, this isn't the kind of thing that I would normally geek out about, but the first time, we're putting all these big chunks of things. I mean, when we collect from the dining facilities, it's massive amounts of food. I mean, on average, it's probably about 10,000 pounds of food scraps a week that we collect. And so to take something like that and to put it in this pile with these fairly large wood chips, you're not, once you wait about 4 to 6 weeks and we take one of the machines, one of the bucket loaders, and open that pile up, none of that stuff is left. I mean, again, it just looks like regular soil that you would use. And so we've used it to grow vegetables. We have a few people that we've worked with to, in addition to the laboratory testing that we do, sending it out for sampling, and that lab testing is very extensive. I mean, it'll tell you amount of potassium, amount of nitrogen. I mean, it's very specific for composting. But we've, like I said, we've worked with some people that are very avid gardeners, and they're like, this is one of the best products we've ever used. And I mean, they're growing vegetables that I've personally eaten. I mean, all you're doing is taking a natural process and speeding it up a little bit and making it more efficient. So it's all organic. And so this is the best way that you're going to be able to grow things. And of course, again, the vermicomposting takes it, 2 or 3 steps further to where it's a lot more efficient. It's a lot more efficient and effective than even traditional composting.
Wow. Definitely. Lights came out. There we go. So this is definitely one way that we can help a lot of reduce a lot of waste, is just keep going in the process. So, well, this is really, really awesome. We truly, truly appreciate you guys taking the time to come and visit with us. Tell us about what amazing products, what's happening over there at Fort Hood, and what we have to look forward to in our communities, what we can do in our own backyard to go ahead and, like we've been doing all year, save the planet. We're trying piece at a time, trying to work on what to do. So we want to thank you so much for participating in our environmental science and for visiting with us today. It was a long road just to get us here. And Christine, we know you don't have your camera on, but we thank you for also setting this up. We have a lot of environmental science events coming out of Fort Hood this year. And our next one is on June 8th. We'll be doing 3 R's of safety in the environment. So we will be talking about recycling and all those fun things, reuse. And what's the 3rd R, guys? Recycle, reuse, reduce. So we will be talking about that then. And also, guys, don't forget this Thursday, we have author night from 6 to 8 in the library. So lots more things going on, and we hope you guys will join us, both our virtuals and our in-person. So thank you, Jackelyn. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Christine, who's hiding on us there. And you guys just have an awesome, oh, she's waving hi. You guys have an awesome day today, and hopefully we'll see you this Thursday. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. And Alyssa, if you will take us out, but you guys don't leave yet.